All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's ADA webinar. I'm going to give it a few minutes a few seconds to allow people to come in from the waiting room, get connected to their audio before we get started. And while everyone is coming in from the waiting room and connecting, I will take care of a few housekeeping items. First off, my name is Brittany Boston. I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, and I will be your moderator and technical support for the webinar today. So if you have any issues with your audio or things aren't connecting, feel free to contact me in the chat, and I will do my best to assist you with that. As a participant on today's webinar, you are in listen-only mode, but we definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, your questions. So feel free to type those into the chat or the Q&A box, or you also have the option to raise your hand if you want to connect with us that way. You have plenty of options to ask questions and communicate with the speaker today as well. And this is also being recorded. So if you have to hop off at any point, or if you have a colleague that you think might enjoy this information as well, we are recording and we will be sharing this to our ICSPS and ADA website once we get everything downloaded and ready to share out. And so with that, I think that's all of my housekeeping items. And so I'm going to hand it over to Nikki to introduce herself and get us started with today's session.
Excellent. Thanks, Brittany. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Michalak. I had the pleasure of working on the Autism Training and Technical Assistance project for many years. And the focus of that was on developing resources for individuals with autism who are transitioning out of high school into post-secondary education or into workforce. And so I'll share a little bit about those resources. We'll highlight them today, as well as giving you access to the links to be able to explore some of those resources on your own. I currently am the statewide director for the Autism Professional Learning and Universal Supports Project, which is another ISB funded grant that provides support to the K through 12 system. We go in and put problem solve with teachers, put antecedent-based interventions in place. And this grant was really in response to the wrongful use of timeout and restraint, which I'm sure you all remember hearing about back in November of must have been November of 2019. The Chicago Tribune and ProPublica partnered and highlighted how there was some inappropriate use of timeout happening in our state. So in response, this project, the Autism Professional Learning and Universal Supports Project, was put in place to help teachers work with students who have intense behavior needs. So travel the state and provide support to teachers. So we'll also be highlighting some of the resources and professional learning that are available through that project. So I'm going to throw a file into the chat box. And this will allow you guys to navigate the resources that we're going to be sharing. It's just a handout. We're going to talk about 2 different virtual spaces today. Did that file come through? Brittany, do you see it in the chat?
Yep, it sure did.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is the handout that is in there, and it will link you on the left side. You'll see a link to, you can click anywhere around it. That will link you to the K through 12 system virtual space, and then on the right is a very similar virtual space. However, the focus is transitioning to post-secondary education as well as workforce. In addition, the Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project logo, which is down in the bottom left, that is also hyperlinked, so you can link out to that website, as is the A+ project that is on the right side, and you can link to it. So I'm going to minimize that handout because I have everything pulled up in the background. And I'm first going to start by highlighting the virtual space that is specific to the K through 12 system. So you'll start here, and then when you click enter, it takes you to this virtual space. This was developed back in April around Autism Awareness Month, but really what we wanted to do is we wanted to highlight and use some of the resources that were available that became so prevalent in COVID time, teachers were using Bitmoji classrooms. And so I was sitting around with some colleagues and we're like, this would be a really awesome way to kind of pull resources together and be able to push them out to different groups of people so that they can have access to resources that are specific to the students that they are working with. So when you first enter this virtual space, you'll see on the whiteboard, there are 8 different areas that you can click on to navigate. So I'm going to go over and highlight some of these. So the first one is I want to learn more about ASD. So when you click on it, oopsies, I double clicked. Sorry. When you click on it, there are different 6 different icons that you could click on. So how familiar are you with ASD? So that, if you click on it, it will take you to this really quick 2-minute training that we're going to watch right now.
How familiar are you with autism? If you are viewing this module, it's very likely that you have interacted with a child or individual with autism, right? Chances are you know or have met someone with autism. You have probably read about it in the news, or maybe you have seen autism portrayed on television and in movies. This module is designed to provide a breadth and depth of information that covers the full autism spectrum and may extend beyond your personal encounters with someone with autism. Throughout this learning series, we will use the terminology autism and ASD interchangeably. We are referring to autism spectrum disorder when we do this. So, what is autism exactly? For many, autism can be a very puzzling and complex disorder. Though there is a lot to still learn about autism, we know much more about it than we did even 15 years ago. Just as our understanding has evolved over the years, so has the way that we define, diagnose, and support individuals with ASD. Let's begin by exploring the definition of autism spectrum disorder. ASD can be defined as a developmental disorder of neurological origin. It is developmental as there is evidence of the disorder, usually before 2 years of age. It is neurological as it originates in the brain and affects the nervous system. Autism is a social communication disorder and affects an individual's ability to communicate, to socially interact, and engage in developmentally appropriate behaviors. Because autism is a spectrum disorder, each person with autism has a distinct set of strengths and challenges. The ways in which people with autism learn, think, and problem solve can range from highly skilled to severely challenged. Some people with ASD may require significant support in their daily lives, while others may need less support, and in some cases, live entirely independently.
Oops. So you can click and watch it again on YouTube. So that's just an example of the what the trainings are like. They're short snippets. This one is specifically focused on understanding autism. So it breaks down those different areas where an individual might be impacted and provides information around that area. So it's a great training that can be used with staff or just anyone. It was developed to be foundational. And so it's a great way to access that information. And then down at the bottom, we have a link on how to turn on closed captioning in case you would like to watch it in Spanish. So that's just the understanding autism. On that handout, if you click and you go to the website, the A+ website, which was down at the bottom right, you can click on the tab online learning. So there's a whole lot more professional learning that is available in addition to understanding autism. So currently we have information on ISB rules for timeout and restraint. As I said, that is a big portion of this current project. We also in the world of autism have evidence-based practices. And so we're starting to develop some core foundational training that overviews what those evidence-based practices are. So right now we have visual schedules, we have functional communication training, and then we have an overview of the functional behavior assessment process. In the next week, we're going to be setting up a classroom, which really focuses on structured teaching and the components of structured teaching. So adding schedules, adding visual structure, adding routines, arranging your physical space. So that is another training that will be available. So you can access that by clicking on this website. It asks you to take a quick pre-test. The content is short and sweet, kind of like what I just shared, where there's little chunks of information, there's engagement activities. You can take a post-test, and if you are a teacher, you can get CPDUs by completing the ASD evaluation. So it's another perk. So that's all included on that website. And coming back to that main page, so the I want to learn about ASD goes over professional learning that's available. The test your knowledge is kind of fun, and this is similar between the two different virtual spaces. They're the same questions. So we'll do a couple of them. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that causes challenges in social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. What do you guys think? Is that a fact or is that a myth? It's a fact. And then you can go on and it walks you through doing the fact or myths. I see that there was a question in the chat. Can I get a link to the presentation? Do you see the handout that was in the virtual space? Those will link you to both of the virtual spaces. So then down at the bottom left, you can always go back to that main room. The next one is really fun. It's a virtual library. And so some of these will actually open up in YouTube and will read the story to you. Others are just links to where to access the book through Amazon or the publisher's site. And so these are all books. I love these because as we're talking about neurodiversity and inclusion, these are all great books to talk about that at the classroom level with students. When we're doing an awareness event like that, I always, if it's a student that others might recognize differences in, depending on the age level, I always clear it with the parent to make sure the parent would be on board in case there are questions. Sometimes parents want their child to be able to share about themselves and their differences and what makes them awesome. Other times, depending on the age level, these are just great books to bring in diversity into your classroom. So these are some of my favorites. Going back to the main room. Autism Level Up Guide. This is an awesome resource. And so this talks about what are we going to do to take it to the next step when we're talking about autism awareness, acceptance. What's that next level up that we can take it? Because acceptance is not enough. So they have a level up guide. You can click on this and it will open up for you. This is the Autism Level Up Guide. You can also, so it talks about what the different levels are, starting with awareness, acceptance, appreciation, empowerment, and advocacy. You can also go to their website and they have a really strong Facebook group, and they will do lots of different discussions, live discussions on Facebook, so little trainings. They also have lots of resources on their website, so it's fantastic. So check that one out. I'm going to go back to the main room. And then virtual sensory room. This was really important during COVID, just because we needed ways to help regulate and calm students and engage them, teach them ways to help regulate. And so if you click on all of these different choices, they will take you to a web page that does not seem to be working right now. I don't know if it's because I'm sharing my screen or what's going on, but this is a digital bubble blower. And so you can, I had to click on the bubbles over here. Well, maybe it's not displaying right. Hopefully you'll have better luck with that link. I'll check it. It worked earlier, but these are all different ways that you can help regulate the sensory system. So then you can play different instruments, xylophone, drum. So that would be music. There's movement, and then there's some calming activities. You can also click on any of these activities, like the trampoline will take you out to go noodle. The hurricane pop thing, oops, I can't be reached. it's SafetyTube. I'll recheck that link. But all of these link out to different areas. This is an aquarium. There are lots of kids that I know. Come on.
Melissa and Doug makes well-crafted toys that spark big imagination.
Waiting for the ad.
No matter how serious of a gamer you are, I'm pretty sure we can all agree on a few things. We love our lighting.
I
and
love
we hate
the
our
ads,
screens
right?
and internet issues.
All right, we're gonna skip that ad. But if you click here, this is all about the aquarium. And so I know a lot of students find this very, very calming. Many families that I've worked with, their kids have the aquariums that they go to sleep with. And so this is just another way that we can include that calming preferred activity into their day. And so that was something that we used a lot during virtual learning. So this is a virtual sensory room, lots of different things to explore. It's really kind of fun. We know that autism has gained a lot of momentum in current TV shows. And so that's a great thing for awareness, and there's lots of different shows that are out there. And so these are links to shows that have aired in the past, but you can click and watch them, and they all highlight individuals or characters with autism. And so that is autism in the current media. Autistic Voices, these are two awesome, I would say, advocates for the world of autism. So Temple Grandin, you can link and watch a TED Talk. It also has lots of other links that you can access from there. And then John Robeson, both of these individuals have came to ISU and presented in the past. I think Temple was probably 4 years ago. And then John Robeson was probably 3 years ago before COVID, but they're amazing advocates for the world of autism. And so this links you to their website. They have trainings. You can access their TED Talks and other resources that they share. So it's a wonderful resource. And then additional resources, there's more. I love reading blogs of parents just to hear what their stories are. And I think that's a great resource for other families. So there is a link to the blogs. There's a link to the Autism Internet modules, which are a great resource, another professional learning opportunity. During COVID, it was, there's a resource that was developed, remote learning for students with autism. So this links directly to the ISB webpage, so that you could put some of these supports in place that we know are effective for students and support them during remote learning. This is also just a great resource for families or for teachers to talk about what might be some of those core structures that we would want to put in place. Visual strategies, this links to a wonderful website where there are downloadable resources available. So you can open up one of these tools, you can download it, and you can use it. So I think it's a really awesome resource. Spot by age 3. So there's a resource on if you're beginning to maybe see some red flags, what are those core characteristics that we should be looking for in a young child. Transition Tools for Life is another resource if you're working with a student who is older. And this is transition tools from birth all the way through adulthood. So it's a huge, like 300-page document with tons and tons of resources. So this was developed by a previous autism project, but a lot of the resources that are available through it are very relevant still today. Autism College and Career, that links to the website that I've already shown you, which is the ADA website. When you go to the ADA website, it's broken down into 6 different audiences. And these are all resource tools that were developed specific to the audience. So if you click on secondary, these would be resources. There's a video, but if you come to resources, there are tons of resources specific to that population. So this would be for a teacher who might be supporting a student with autism in like the middle school, junior high, high school age range. Because remember, this project is focused on transition. And then, for instance, if you go to post-secondary, there are also, you go back up to the tab resources at the top, there are a lot of resources that are specific to maybe a faculty member who is working for the first time with a student with autism. So there's a cheat sheet on what is autism, what might you notice in a classroom, and what are some strategies that could be put in place so that I as a teacher could be more effective working with the individual. So that is the Autism College and Career website. And then there are even more people. If you've been on any of our past webinars, the past couple of months, you've already heard Haley Moss. She's fantastic. So there's a link to her website. And then there's a couple of other people here who have autism that are just great advocates and awesome to share their information. So I'm going to go back to the main room. That highlights the virtual space for kind of the K through 12 system. Are there any questions about this one? I'm going to hop over and overview the virtual space for the transition aged. Show you some differences in the resources that are available.
So if you guys have any questions on this particular resource, feel free to type those in the chat or the Q&A box, depending on whichever device you are joining us from today.
Okay.
And we did, again, Nikki, you answered that question about the link to the presentation. So the handout is in the chat, but also the handout, the recording, everything will be shared on the ICSPS website, the ADA website, I would imagine the Autism Plus website. We'll have it everywhere for you guys to utilize with the resources as well.
Gain access to pretty easily. All right, I'm gonna hop over, I'm gonna close out some of these browsers. And then open up the next one, which looks semi-similar, same title, but this one has that focus of transition. So it has the Autism Level Up guide first. And so that was just because we want to make sure that it was important at the time. It is important, but it really helps us identify where we're at in that process of awareness to advocacy. So again, like I said, on their Facebook page, as well as their website, they have links to many trainings. They do lots of Facebook Lives. So it's an awesome resource and they share great information. Tips, tools for college. And so this, I'm going to show you, this highlights information that is on the ADA website. So we're going to take about a minute and watch this video.
As more and more students with autism spectrum disorder enter higher education, there is a need for well-designed systems that are intentional in the way they support students. There are several supports that can help improve the college experience for individuals with ASD that go beyond and extend the typical services offered through the disability offices. On a campus, it's important for there to be awareness and acceptance of ASDs, to develop targeted services for students with ASD, and to have comprehensive program service models and action planning for students with ASD. Specifically, higher education programs need to provide access services for students with ASD that lead to successful academic outcomes while providing educational opportunities that increase self-knowledge in the areas of executive functioning, self-regulation, social interaction, self-advocacy, and career preparation. To facilitate a campus-wide environment of inclusion, faculty and staff need to be provided professional learning specific to learners with ASD and understand how to interact with a student on the autism spectrum. The higher education section provides resources specific to professionals in a community college or university setting.
So it overviews the resources that are available on the website. So that was from post-secondary. So if you click on post-secondary, this is the video that we just watched. And then if you link up to resources, those are the resources. On this virtual space right here, the transition to post-secondary education, if you click on tools, it will pop you open to some of the resources that are available on that portal. And so this has a resource on support changes from high school to college. We know once someone graduates high school, unfortunately, it's often a service cliff, and the guidelines or the laws that were in existence for a student in high school change when they leave that public school setting. So this is a resource that outlines the differences between high school and what would be provided in college. The middle is the tips for faculty, and I went over that briefly just a moment ago. And then this is another resource, and it's really a resource that would be effective for the K through 12 system, as well as post-secondary or someone who is thinking about disclosing their autism in a work environment. Just anybody, it focuses on disclosure. And so this is a resource that talks about when should I disclose and how do I disclose that I have autism? Who do I disclose with? And so it's a great resource if you're talking about self-advocacy with an individual to help support them through that process of disclosing. So those are post-secondary tool resources. And again, oops, there's more on the website. The next link, Tools for Employment, will then link you to the video that overviews what is available on the employment area of the website. When you click on tools, it will highlight some of the tools that are available in the employment portal. So there are 8 of them on here, and I'm sure there's more on the website, but just to give you an overview of what is available. Getting the best from an employee with ASD. These highlight 10 different tips. What does the employee with autism bring to the table? I mean, there's so many strengths and so many different ways that we can be better staff and support people. So that's what this highlights, is those 10 tips for success. The next one is, why should I hire? What are the benefits? And so it highlights different reasons why we would want to hire someone who has autism. This is a job description template. And so it takes a job description, which might be loaded with information, and it allows you to break it down in a concrete way so that an individual with autism can really read through it, grab the important information, and then be able to share that in a concrete way. Social communication in the workplace. We know social communication is sometimes an area of difficulty for an individual with autism. And so this is a rating scale that where someone can go through and highlight if it's a strength or a weakness. And then those areas that are a weakness could be targeted for intervention or targeted for support. Interviewing tips. You'll see there's interviewing tips. There's an interviewing tips assessment. So the tips go over what the expectations are, what can be done, what does it look like, what does it sound like. And then the interviewing tips assessment is a great tool to use before somebody would interview, and it gives them a way to reflect upon their practices. And then you can go back and teach if there's any areas that would need to be improved, targeted for improvement. The work environment assessment, there's a couple of these. There's a work environment assessment. I think there's a classroom assessment, but what it does is it takes the different, it takes a look at the environment. So what is the noise level? What smells are in the environment? And so the work environment assessment is specific to jobs. So if you are working with somebody who has different ways to process sensory information and is maybe hypersensitive to certain smells, then there might be certain jobs that you would want to steer away from if that's going to prohibit the person from being successful. And so you can go through the work environment assessment and help identify what might be some jobs that you want to stay away from. What are some areas that their sensory system might be impacted? You can work on ways to regulate. And so it's a very thorough document that takes a look at the environment and how someone could be successful or where support could be provided within an environment. And then again, goes back to the, when should I disclose my autism? Some of these tools you'll see in different areas, like when should I disclose is going to be here. It's also going to be in the student resources. It's going to be in family. So you can see that it is multi available. I see that there is a question. Juliana has her hand raised. Is your question, can you send the link to the Google Slides, or is there an additional question? That was your question. Okay. I don't know if it, here, I'm going to put the link. I'm going to resend the handout in the chat box in case it is not available anymore. You should be able to click on that virtual space handout, and it'll come up with 2 icons in the middle. The left is for the virtual space for the K through 12 system, and the right is for the one that I'm sharing right now. You should be able to click and link to it. If not, you'll be getting an email that follows up with all of the resources. Okay, going back to the main room. Tools for young adults. Again, this links you to the ADA webpage, highlights different tools that are available. The tools, again, like I said, when should I disclose my autism? There is a self-assessment. This self-assessment was actually really fun to use and develop. It was modified from a program that is specific, a college program that is specific to individuals with autism. And so our stakeholder advocacy group got together, and we were thinking, well, if this is what a college program, a very well-known college program for individuals with autism is using as a part of their interview process, then these are the skills that we need to be teaching in high school for those who are going on to post-secondary education or college bound. And so what we did is we created a self-assessment with that interview form, and we allow students to take it and self-assess, and then teachers will sit down and self-assess, and they are not self-assess, will also assess with the student where they think they are in different, I think there's like 7 different topical areas: academics, safety, there's a whole, it is thorough. And then what you can do is you can rate yourself. And what teachers were doing is there was an area that was a 1, 2, or a 3. So it was an area that the student self-identified as needing as a low score and wanting to improve that score. They would just lift that and take that indicator and write it as an IEP goal into the student's transition plan. And so they would self-assess 3 times throughout the school year. And by the end of the school year, because they had focused on some of these as goals, they showed an improvement. And so you'll see there's a rating scale at the end of the document that can be used if you want to use it in that similar way. And then there's also, you can kind of see it here. Let me see if I can actually link to the tool. Oh, you can download it. And so what that does then, here's the tool. Linked it, made it easy. Independent living, socialization, sexuality, safety, health, stress, and personal insight. So then you can go through and you can rate them. And then you can highlight what is good and what are some areas that need to be worked on. And that's really nice here. It's almost like a student profile. So you can get a 1-page overview of what are the strengths, what are the needs, and then what are the supports that we're going to put in place to help the student be successful. And so that's why I really like these last 2 pages, because it kind of captures and summarizes all of the information that was collected so that we know. And then this can be used if there's a substitute in the room, just to give an overview of the student. Hey, here's what their strengths are. Here are some of the things that they're working on. These are the supports that are in place to help the student be successful. So you can click on that. And then the sensory environment assessment is very similar to the work environment assessment, where it talks about the different areas of the environment and how a person might be impacted. So you rate never to depends on the environment. So for instance, here's an example within the noise level. Some places are very loud. I would be comfortable in a noisy environment. Some people are not comfortable in a noisy environment. And so that might be rated a 1, and we might need to think of some supports that we could put in place. For instance, I know like my earbuds are noise cancellation earbuds. Sometimes you see people using headphones, or maybe those aren't going to work for that individual, and maybe we need to steer clear of that specific noisy environment. Smells, temperature, touch and tactile. So how is our ability to be touched? Lighting. I know these lovely fluorescent lights often produce a sound, and for some individuals that the pitch of that sound and the noise of it, they can hear the 60 cycle noise, is painful. And so if that's going to be the case and they're going to go to work and they're going to be in pain all day, well, then what accommodations can we put in place to make that environment a little bit more friendly and safe for that individual? Social navigation. And so this helps an individual identify what are some areas that we might want to work towards, and also helps with self-regulation. You go back. So those are the young adult tools that are developed specific for the individual, almost like self-assessments. The test your knowledge is very similar to, it's the same questions that we highlighted in the first group. I skipped over, I want to learn more about ASD. That is the exact same content that was in the first virtual space that we shared, that overviews understanding autism. Sometimes I think that that's a great resource to share because we often do a lot of research and support on children with autism, and we share information with teachers. However, once individuals transition into the adult world, there's not a whole lot of information on what understanding autism, what is autism. So this is a great resource to share. Hopping back down to the bottom, the Build Your Library. So this is specific to transition and adults. The one that we saw earlier was really focused on younger children and youth. This is focused on adolescents and adults. And so these are just some really great books. Rules is a fiction book. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, if you haven't read that yet, wonderful. It's a fictional read, but it's fantastic. And there's just so many different resources here that are great, credible books or resources. So if you click on one, it will link you to, like I said, the publisher website or Amazon, where you can access the book. This is a great one, Come to Life by Tom Island. He's fantastic, and so is his mom. These are great resources on the right here, Students with the Asperger's Syndrome, a guide for college personnel. So these were some of the first books that were developed and written specific to transitioning into a post-secondary environment, into a college setting. And then Peers for young adults. Peers focuses on social skills, and they have a whole curriculum beginning for younger students all the way up to young adults. And so you can click on any of these and it will pop you out, so you can purchase, or you can download on your Kindle or gain access and share with other people. So that is the virtual library. The Autistic Voices is very similar. It will pop you out to Temple Grandin's website. You can learn more about Temple Grandin. She oftentimes has trainings, so you can click and gain access to that content. And the same with John Robeson. His website is here. These are some of the books that he has written, which were also included in the virtual library, but you can learn more about him and how he is impacted by his autism. And then additional resources. So there are many self-advocates, so you can click on that. Stephen Shore, he is phenomenal. He teaches at a university out east, so you can watch his TEDx talk. Tom Island, he is the one who wrote the book that was down at the bottom. He and his mom is, he's an accountant, I think, but he shares his story and how he navigated college, what his goals and dreams are. And then Carrie Margot is another self-advocate. He actually, what's pretty cool about him is there's been some movies that are in development right now that highlight individuals with autism, and he is the person behind the scenes that is working with the actor to help them step into that role of someone with autism. So he is the man behind the scenes sharing how he is impacted and how that is portrayed in movies. So great resource. And then autism internet modules, you have to sign up for an account. They don't spam you. But it does highlight, like, they have so many different modules. So lots and lots of great information if you want to learn more about autism. College internship program is another resource that has some great resources for individuals who are attending college. Employment toolkit, this links to Autism Speaks website. Autism Speaks has some great resources, and so this is one that they have specifically developed for employment. The Autism Transition Tools for Life, I shared that with the earlier virtual space. It is for life, so it starts when individuals are young, kids are young, but it also includes resources for transitioning into post-secondary as well as workforce and young adulthood. And then it links to the Autism College and Career website. And then there's other links to Autism Acceptance Month, which is in April, and their initiatives. So you have the handout. You are able to go through and navigate each of these virtual spaces, share it. Please let me know if you have any questions. I am going to hang on here for the next couple of minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions or chat with you if you'd like. So I hope that you found something that is going to be helpful to you, and that you get to go explore and navigate on your own. Thank you.
So Nikki, thank you so much. I know I'm definitely going to utilize this myself for my little ones, and maybe even share it with, I have a new kindergartner, so maybe even share it with my kindergartner's teacher as well, because these are great resources. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type those in the chat, or if you like and you have a working microphone, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Like Nikki said, we will stay on for a few minutes just in case there's any lingering questions. If you don't have any questions, feel free to log off and go and explore this resource that we shared with you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people kind of jump off, but we'll give it one more minute just in case anyone's trying to type a question in the chat there. All right, Nikki, I'm not seeing any questions come through. So all of these resources will be shared out on multiple websites. We're going to make it as easy as we possibly can for you guys to find these and utilize them. And if you have any questions, you can, those two websites that I shared also have contact information on there. So feel free to reach out to us as well. So Nikki, again, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Awesome. Bye. Thank you.